We're talking with Angela Maiers again. I spoke with her when I first started doing this series of interviews. She, unlike most of the others, is not easy to describe in a job title. She is a passionate educator and evangelist for the use of social media in education at all levels and consults with educators and administrators and anybody who is interested in learning. I want to talk a little bit about your interest in looking at the kind of overarching frameworks beyond social media and connected learning about the power of networks. How does that work with the youngest children? How does that work with everybody?
Mm. Thanks, Howard. I'm really happy to be back here again and connecting with you and with DML. I think it brings you back to the core root of what your role is and what your function is as a teacher. I started as a kindergarten teacher, and they write all the rules, so you just try to follow up. And I think that whatever is not connected in your classroom, they force you to make a connection. But the goal of kindergarten is twofold. It is to help every individual child live up to and into their own unique genius, but via the community. So the goal at the end is to create a community of learners. So every action, every interaction, every transaction is so that our students know that they are contributing members of a community and that we is much smarter than me. And how do we learn to need each other? And how do we learn to help each other? And how do we learn to learn for each other? Not just from each other, not just with each other, but learn for each other. So when social media came along, that's really where the revolution lies, where Web 1.0 was the access to learn from other people in a really scalable way. And then Web 2.0 came along, and it was the power to interact with people while you were learning and what you were learning about. But the essence of whatever we call the web now, this amazing network and life stream, is that we are learning for other people. And that if you really lead with understanding that, and I think David Weinberger said this, that the smartest person in the room is the room. That's always been the case. But right now we have the power to expand who our room is and to invite others in our room that would not otherwise be able to be there, and then to leverage the collective genius of that room and do amazing things together forward. My motto on my blog is, "We are smarter together." It's not just a tagline. It's absolutely the most fundamental core human understanding that's existed since we started describing what learning is. We are smarter together.
So, what tactically do you do with kindergartners, with high school students, to get them really excited about this idea?
I think the most important understanding, so there's one tagline in my classroom and one tagline whether I'm working with big brands and businesses or 8-year-olds. You are a genius, and the world or the room, whatever your world is, and it could be 15 people in a room or 15,000 people in a room, the world needs your contribution. And that is not a statement of inspiration. That is a call to arms and an expectation of responsibility. That if any one of us individually withholds what it is we can serve and service the room, then not only does our learning suffer, the room suffers. We are unable to make the impact that we could because we're not working together. And I think that's a really incredible, important message, that we are positioning as educators the web as some place we go to get stuff. When you position, just like with 5-year-olds, that this is a place that you get to give to other people, that you learn how to be a helper, and you learn how to be a leader, and you learn how to be a collaborator, and you learn how to be of service to somebody else, because that's what a community is. Individuals in service of something bigger than themselves. That's how you get people excited. You don't tell them you matter to excite them. You tell them you matter because you are essential in the success of us. And those are the most empowering and empowered words for somebody to say to you, "Howard, I needed you. I can't imagine what today would have been like if you didn't show up. I'm really thankful that you said this or did this. It added value." When you know you are needed, it propels you individually to a level that you could never get to by yourself.
Well, I certainly agree with the message, and I imagine that there are kindergarten teachers out there who are resonating with this,
Hmm.
and they have the question, okay, what kind of exercise do I do with my students using digital media or not that can really bring this home to them rather than only telling them? I think telling them that they
Right.
matter is important, but
Right.
of course doing it is essential.
So I'm really glad you asked that because it's the impetus of, I believe, a revolutionary movement, Choose to Matter. So, how do we operationalize mattering? So, I started a structure in schools very similar to Google's, very similar to IDEO's or 3M's, where we asked classrooms and teachers to allow 1 hour a week, we call that Genius Hour, for students to have a reason for their genius to show up. So, the first sort of essence of that or the structure of that is that you need to claim and name your genius for the purpose of making it public. So on the web, this is called personal branding. In a classroom, it's called owning your genius and naming your genius. So there's literally a physical wall that was in schools that says this is the genius that exists in this room. So if you have problem A, you know that you're going to need this person, this person, this person, this person to be on your dream team to accomplish the task. Without revealing or hiding what it is you have to contribute, no one knows what they can count on. And they start panicking that they don't have the solutions necessary to move forward ideas to complex problems. But if you know that in my room today, we have a visionary, we have an artist, we have a person that can keep us on task, we have a dreamer, we have this, then you can construct a dream team, if you will. So I take teachers and leaders through that process of naming and claiming your genius with humility and consciousness of being able to let the room know what they can count on from you. And then the second aspect is finding time to be together as a room to pursue something that matters. And so we just offer that question: what matters to you? What matters to this room? What matters to this community? What matters to you? And the driving question that gets contribution is the question that we say drives the movement, which is if you said, well, animals matter to me or education matters to me, well, that's great. But the question that drives action is what breaks your heart about that? So when you pursue, we call this heartbreak mapping. When you pursue and you map your heartbreak, well, what breaks your heart about education? Well, what breaks your heart about animals? What? And then the response to that is, what are we going to do about that? And so from this very simple structure of 1 hour a week, we have, because of social technologies, we moved from classroom bulletin boards to a Google Doc, and then we had 600 classrooms on a Google Doc, and then we moved to a Facebook page, and then we had 5,000 teachers on a Facebook page, and now we've moved to a platform, the actual web, built for us, because we started contributing what it is not only that mattered to us, but how we're going to choose to matter. And it started a full-scale movement, and it's being led by children, and it's extraordinary. I'm just trying to keep up to their genius.
You know, you didn't use the words peer learning, but it seems like that there's some peer learning
Well,
involved in this. I remember when I was in kindergarten, my favorite part of it was show and tell.
yes.
That was like we had 1 minute to
Yep.
be the teacher
Yes.
and to learn from each other. It sounds like what you're talking about is really expanding show and tell beyond the dimension of just showing and telling, but claiming to have some expertise in something.
Absolutely. And making that public with that intention that you are simultaneously a leader and a learner. And that in one aspect, the skill set or the mindset is how do you show something with humility? And how do you show something with compassion? So that you're not saying, hey, look at me, but you're saying, look at what I can offer and give to somebody who may be of need in our community. So if you come across them, or if I come across them, that I'm letting them know that I'm willing to serve you. And then listening to what people tell you, being really interested instead of trying to be interesting, which is what a lot of people strive to find significance and influence, is they try to act like they're the most interesting or smart person in the room, where you're much better off to teach kids to be interested, to ask really good questions, to listen really carefully, to open their hearts to other stories. And then it really is sort of a 21st century show and tell with a match.com component, because we have technologies now that can track what matters to you and what matters here, and then be able to pull those communities together saying, wow, this community over here, Howard needs your genius. And for the first year of Genius Hour sort of scaling, we really did focus on peer-to-peer mentoring and peer-to-peer modeling. And we partnered with Skype in the classroom so that we could excavate those communities of learners coming together. So if one third grade classroom, that the environment mattered to them, we could connect it with another third grade. What has really opened up from social media is we've been able to break down every generational silo, every discipline silo, and bring a common place so that whoever that content matters to, it could be a big enterprise, it could be a nonprofit, it could be a 6-year-old, that we literally pool and scale the collective genius that's in our presence. And that's how the movement is moving forward now, that we have the current leaders and innovators in the world actually mentoring and monitoring these future passionate leaders. And it's just been the most extraordinary thing to see.
So you bring these outsiders in via Skype, via the Google Docs. What is exactly, how do people go about doing this?
So we have done this, first it was just random. So I would get a project from Genius Hour and I'd blog about it and I'd tweet about it. And what really shifted my focus was the velocity in which a student's idea scaled. Because the world never, ever, and the web does not underestimate a contribution that is valuable. It doesn't say, well, that came from a 5-year-old, or that came from somebody who doesn't have a degree from Stanford, or whatever. It says, geez, this is an idea that can make an impact. Let's act on it. So when that started happening with one project, and then another project, and then another project, and a very small example is a project where a group of 8-year-olds, these are 8-year-olds that have been practicing this this process of mattering, if you will, or choosing to matter. They said, well, literacy matters to us, but what breaks our heart is that there are other 8-year-olds who don't know what it's like to have a book. They've never been to a library. They don't even have a library. And they looked at each other and they said, well, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about this? I said, that's a great question. And 2 recesses later, they raised enough money to literally build a library in another country. And we blogged, I showcased that process on the blog, on my blog. And then because of my social network, which it infuses every industry and every enterprise, I had somebody step up from my network and say, well, we'll donate more lumber to that. And boom, 5 libraries are being built. That happened every single project I blogged about. And I said, this is immoral that there is not a connected learning space, a connected show and tell, if you will, that allows any idea to be placed with honor and to reach out to anybody that wants to show or tell about that and come together and move forward solutions to the world's most complicated problems. And so we partnered with an innovation network called BIF, the Business Innovation Factory, that have about 400 leaders in it that know how to scale innovation. And they follow a hashtag that kids use, and they monitor that hashtag, and they provide feedback via Twitter. They come in during Skype or Google Hangouts or scheduled visits, and they've been mentoring live for the last several weeks these quests. It's just amazing.
Well, fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm foreseeing that there are educators out there who are going to catch fire with
Yes.
this
Let's hope.
and look at the resources that you've provided and take off on their own. So good luck with this, Angela.
Thank you, Howard. I'll send you some of those resources in ways that any teacher, we need all genius. So we welcome it all.